Pretty unbelievable that anyone could carry this out. And then we're learning that he goes on and picks people up, Uber customers, in the middle of all this.
These are unsettling details that we're learning. I spoke to a source with knowledge of the investigation, Poppy, who tells me that this suspect was an Uber driver and, yes, in fact, was picking up fares in between his shooting spree. As a matter of fact, when he was eventually captured about 12:30 a.m. last night, he was still actively working, still picking up fares when he was taken into custody. Police describe him as being very even-tempered when he was eventually arrested. I did learn just a short time ago that he has been interviewed, interrogated by police, but even still, they don't have a motive. What really bothers authorities here locally is the sheer randomness of this all. The police chief was telling me that for all intents and purposes, the suspect is an average Joe. They did seize a semi-automatic handgun from his person when they arrested him. They also took a look inside of his home and seized several other weapons, Poppy. They're trying to figure out if whether or not those weapons were used in the commission of this shooting spree.
I know in the last few hours, Nick, we've just been learning the names of some of the victims, so I want to know what you can tell us about them. And then there's a child still fighting for her life.
Yeah. 6 people killed by this suspect. He's expected to be arraigned sometime tomorrow on those murder charges. The victims' range ages between 14 years old, 74 years old. 2 of them still wounded critically. One of them, a mother of 3 children. That 14-year-old that you mentioned had surgery earlier this morning. She still is in very, very critical condition, according to the police. They're really worried about her prognosis. Another of the 6 victims was a father and son. They were at a car dealership looking for a car when they were shot and killed by this suspect. 4 others were shot and killed at a Cracker Barrel. And this community, it's a safe community, Poppy. Kalamazoo only had 2 homicides all of last year. That number has already been eclipsed by this shooting spree carried out by this suspect who's in custody.
Well, we're getting new details about the breaking news in Kalamazoo, Michigan. A 14-year-old girl we know now is fighting for her life, also the mother of 3.
Well, the only 2 survivors of a shooting spree in Kalamazoo, Michigan last night. A suspect has been taken into custody, and police say 45-year-old Jason Dalton will face murder charges tomorrow. He's accused of shooting 8 people, killing 6. CNN's Ryan Young has been following this story. He's on the phone with more on what happened. Ryan, officials held a news conference about an hour ago. What are you learning?
Well, they did hold that news conference just a short time ago, and they did update the numbers from 7 dead to 6. We are now told a 14-year-old girl who was shot in a parking lot along with some other women has actually survived for right now. We're told she's in critical condition at the hospital. First, it was reported she was dead, but now we're being told she is alive, so that is a positive development in this case. We've actually made our way over to the suspect's house, and we are looking at probably 6 or 7 police cars that are out in front right now as they're doing their evidence investigation. You got to think now they have 4 scenes involved in this. That 45-year-old, of course, taken into custody, Jason Dalton. And what we do know right now is they have his phone. They do believe that he was talking with somebody during the shooting. We also know that there was video from 2 of the scenes that helped track him down, because obviously there was a space of time between that first shooting and the last shooting. The first shooting was at 6 o'clock. There was a woman walking with several kids coming in a parking lot when all of a sudden he walked up and started shooting, used a semi-automatic handgun. They wouldn't tell us what kind of handgun, but they did tell us a semi-automatic handgun before doing those 2 other shootings.
This started around 6 o'clock. He pulled into a parking lot, and he decided to aim his gun at a woman who was walking with several children. He opened fire on her, shooting her 4 times from what we're told. She's in critical condition. Then it took 4 hours before the next shooting. That was around 10 o'clock. By that time, police say they did have a description of a car, a Chevy HHR that they were looking for, but that didn't stop him from showing up at a Kia dealership and shooting 2 people there. We believe a father and son. And then he moved on to a Cracker Barrel location where he shot 5 people there, killing several of the people in that parking lot. 7 people dead in total. We talked to the undersheriff just about the impact that this has on this community.
Well, I was born and raised in this town, and I still live here. And this just shocks this community. You know, we're not a naive community. We have our situations that all communities have. But to have somebody just drive around randomly, gunning people down for no apparent reason, that just attacks the psyche of of the community and any community for that matter.
You think about the impact of this, the idea that the suspect was just driving around, trying to figure out what the motive is at this point. We're hoping at that news conference that's going to happen within the next hour and a half or so that we'll be able to get some more details about this. We do know there's an active scene at the suspect's house right now where they're going through his apartment. We've asked several questions about whether or not that apartment was booby-trapped or whether or not he left any messages behind for why this shooting happened. But so far, they're not sharing that information with us. We do know several different Michigan agencies are working this case. As you can understand, the idea that someone would go from parking lot to parking lot and situations and just opening fire and shooting innocent people in front of children and shooting children, you can understand why this community is shaken at this point.
In the U.S. state of Michigan, at least 7 people were killed after a shooting rampage in Kalamazoo. The gunman attacked 3 seemingly random locations, shooting a total of 9 people at an apartment complex, a car dealership, and a restaurant parking lot. All were hit within a few hours. At least 1 child is among the dead. An eyewitness described seeing police pursuing the suspect.
As soon as she said, like, the type of vehicle, she said, "Is it a Chevy?" And I said, it totally was. I couldn't put 2 and 2 together that, like, this is the vehicle that they've been describing all night. And, you know, you just never expect it to be, you know, that person. And, you know, that's the thing, you know, that's why my respect goes out to the police officers, because of the fact that, like I said, you know, it takes a lot to subject yourself to those kind of things. So, I don't know, I can't imagine
Did you ever see a weapon?
No, like I said, I was never that close, but, you know, I knew for sure that that was them as soon as I had seen all the police cars arrive. So I was just, you know, driving right by. I was just spending, you know, my birthday downtown.
Police say that they do have a strong suspect in custody. CNN legal analyst Tom Fuentes assessed the situation.
They're confident they have the suspect, but they're not going to put out to the people that they absolutely are sure they have them. I think that they ought to be able to figure that out pretty quickly. But at this point, we don't know what the basis of the arrest was. Did they get a license plate description or a vehicle description, make a traffic stop, in which case they ought to be able to search that vehicle and see if there's still weapons in it or ammunition in it. They have the suspect in custody. They should be able to do forensic examinations on him to see if he has gunpowder residue either on his hands or also his clothing. If they had a description of the subject and a license plate, but went to that residence and took him out of a residence, then they're going to want to get a search warrant and examine the residence for weapons and ammunition and other indications of the evidence in this shooting. So there's a number of possibilities. The police did put up a lot of detail.
A quote, strong suspect is in custody in the serial shootings in Michigan that killed 6 people. Now, according to authorities, the gunman opened fire in multiple locations in Kalamazoo County, Michigan. Police say 4 people were killed at a local Cracker Barrel restaurant. One of them, sadly, was an 8-year-old child. 2 others were killed at a car dealership.
3 people are in serious or critical condition at this moment. Police spotted the suspect's vehicle and took him into custody without incident, thankfully there. Let's bring in CNN law enforcement analyst and former FBI Deputy Director Tom Fuentes. Tom, you've been watching this with us as this breaking news has kind of developed. 6 people killed. There are people still in critical condition. They're using this term, quote unquote, strong suspect. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means, Kate, that they're confident they have the suspect, but they're not going to put out to the people that they absolutely are sure they have them. I think that they ought to be able to figure that out pretty quickly. But at this point, we don't know what the basis of the arrest was. Did they get a license plate description or a vehicle description, make a traffic stop, in which case they ought to be able to search that vehicle and see if there's still weapons in it or ammunition in it. They have the suspect in custody. They should be able to do forensic examinations on him to see if he has gunpowder residue either on his hands or also his clothing. If they had a description of the subject and a license plate, but went to that residence and took him out of a residence, then they're going to want to get a search warrant and examine the residence for weapons and ammunition and other indications of the evidence in this shooting. So there's a number of possibilities. The police did put up a lot of detail.